Hey everybody, welcome back to Basic Land Walk. We're here with another deck tech today. This is Enchantress, the Sunglasses variant, one of my own personal paper decks that I play. It is built like any other typical Enchantress shell. If you're new to that as a concept, we have 8 of these effects in Argothian Enchantress. Whenever you successfully cast an enchantment spell, draw a card. The other copy of that effect is Enchantress's Presence, which is where the name of the deck comes from, is these Enchantresses. My variant is a little different and it has a lot of spice. I'll be the first to admit some of these options are just bad because I like to play cards that are a little bit off kilter and offbeat. Starting with Sunglasses of Urza, a 3-mana do nothing artifact that lets us use white mana as though it was red. This is the other namesake of the deck. We are trying to leverage this in a prisony shell that lets us eventually crank out red mana to turn on Dragon's Roost and start pumping out 5/5 flyers, or maybe hard cast a form of the dragon if we need to do that. The other ways to get these big clunky enchantments into play is replenish. I'm only playing a single copy because I only own one copy. And let's go over some of the other weird one-ofs and maybe strange choices for Enchantress decks. We are playing some not enchantment cards that look a little funny here. We've got 2 Phantom Nishobas in the main, which this is a choice because I also play Defense of the Heart. One of my problems when I play in my local area is getting absolutely bodied by go wide and creature decks, and sometimes I get pressured before I can find my confinements and before I can actually set up my defenses in a meaningful way. Defense of the Heart is a guaranteed way for me to go get 14 lifelinking power. I get to flop 2 of these idiots into play, and it's just a big buffer that lets me kind of have a different angle that people might not be ready for. It's a way to play through traditional enchantment removal. I've really liked the creature pivot, at least in the main deck. But we'll go card by card here. Crop rotation is a way for me to find my one Sarah Sanctum because I only own one. I'm playing a little bit of redundancy. And to make crop rotation more worth it, I'm also playing a Core Haven to go get if we need to fetch a way to prevent being pressured by a single creature. Maybe those dreadnoughts are getting a little faster than we care to deal with. They can pay through their elephant grasses. Like, this is just another toolbox card. 18 land deck, playing crop rotation might seem kind of bad, but if they're going to wasteland our Sarah Sanctum anyway, I'd like to be able to turn it into something useful. And going through the enchantments, we've got a lot of one-ofs here, so bear with me. We have Aura of Silence. Artifact and enchantment spells cost target opponent an additional 2 to play, and then we can sacrifice it to destroy an artifact or enchantment. Prison effect, also a disenchant on a stick that draws us a bunch of cards. We like everything about this card. Burgeoning. This is a cantrip. It's 1 green, draw a bunch of cards. We don't really care about the land effect. Sometimes it comes up, but mostly this is 1 green, draw a card, or draw 2 or 3 cards. City of Solitude is a main deck way to protect ourselves from counterspell decks that want to do things in our end step. We can go get a city or find it naturally and just be really solid when we're doing our turn. Know that we're not going to get blown out by anything weird. Defense of the Heart. We are playing this card specifically for the Nishobas. During your upkeep, if one of your opponents controls 3 or more creatures, we can sacrifice, well, we have to sacrifice Defense of the Heart. Search your library for up to 2 creature cards, put those creatures into play, shuffle your library. Like I said, if our opponent goes wide, plays more than 2 creatures, we get this in play. On our next upkeep, we get to go flop 2 Nishobas into play, and 2 Nishobas is hard for a lot of decks to deal with just on a baseline. Being able to flop them into play for free gives us 14 mana worth of value. Seems decent. It actually has come up a lot. I'm playing this deck in the monthly, for the online monthly, and this has come up in both matches so far. It's been pretty fun. Dragon's Roost, 6 mana, red enchantment, and for 7 mana, 2 of it has to be red. We can put a 5/5 red dragon creature token with flying into play. So this is our engine card. We get a Sarah Sanctum, which, if you're not familiar with, Sarah Sanctum is the most broken land in Enchantress. We can add white mana to our mana pool for each enchantment we control. If we have a Sunglasses in play, we can use white mana as though it was red. If we get enough enchantments in play, we can crank out 10 power worth of dragons in a turn rotation pretty consistently, pretty easily, almost without really having to try that hard. Elephant Grass is another way we can protect ourselves. It's a cantrip in the matches where it's bad, and if it's not bad, it's really good at slowing our opponent down, buying us some time. Black creatures cannot attack you, and non-black creatures cannot attack you unless their controller pays an additional 2 mana for each attacking creature. It's a baby propaganda that we have to pay for. Cumulative upkeep, we can only keep it around for so many turns, but often it gets us those 2 to 3 turns we need to bridge into our bigger enchantments that are a lot more oppressive, or we're digging and finding deeper answers in our deck, which is really valuable. We're on 4 presences. Whenever we play an enchantment, we draw a card. 1 exploration. I'm not playing enough lands to really justify it in my build, but it is 1 green, draw a bunch of cards. And in the sideboarded games, it can be an explosive oath or something like that. Form of the Dragon we already talked about. If you don't know what it does, at the beginning of your upkeep, Form of the Dragon deals 5 damage to target creature or player. At the beginning or at the end of each turn, your life total becomes 5, and creatures without flying can't attack you. So if your opponent doesn't have any flying creatures, they can't damage you unless they have any burn spells, and they have to have 5 points of burn in 1 turn, or you just go back to 5. Ground Seal is another cantrip that kind of cuts off cards in graveyards. Cards in graveyards can't be the targets of spells or abilities. Shuts off Reanimator, shuts off Blessing Loops if they're on the hard cast. Karmic Justice. Whenever a spell or ability an opponent controls destroys a non-creature permanent you control, you may destroy target permanent that opponent controls. This makes it really punishing for our opponent to blow up our permanents, because we only have 6 creatures, which is more than a typical Enchantress deck. If they wasteland us, we get to blow up any one of their permanents. Their disenchants means we blow up one of their permanents. It makes it a bad deal for them all the way around. Miri's Guile, really good card, helps us select and also draws cards if we have our Enchantresses already in play. Peace of Mind is a cheeky way to get Form of the Dragon into our graveyard if we have our Replenish and Form in hand. It's also a sustain effect. If we're getting pressured, we can pitch extra cards to gain 3 life, 1 white mana at a time. 3 Seal of Cleansings to answer those pesky enchantments and artifacts. 2 Solitary Confinements. This is a prison piece with Enchantress effects. If we can draw more cards than we necessarily need in a turn, we can basically hurdle up completely protected. We have to sacrifice it in our upkeep unless we discard a card, and we have to skip our draw step. But as a bonus, we can't be the target of spells or abilities. We have Shroud as the player and prevent all damage that would be dealt to you. So we can't be damaged, we can't be targeted. That gives us a lot of time. If we're pitching 1 card in a turn and we're drawing 2, 3, 4 cards, if we have multiple effects like this, we are going to overpower our opponent with some pretty resolute inevitability. For Sterling Grove, this is the other prison piece that protects all of the other pieces. All other enchantments you control can't be the target of spells or abilities, and for 1, we can sacrifice Sterling Grove, search our library for an enchantment card, reveal it, shuffle our library, put that card on top. So if somebody wants to disenchant our other enchantments, they have to target our Sterling Grove first. If we have a mana open, we can crack Sterling Grove to go get another Sterling Grove and just repeat the lock on the following turn. Once we get 2 Sterling Groves in play, none of our enchantments can be targeted anymore. And it's just a hard lock. We can tutor when we find an extra one and whatnot. 4 Wild Growths. This is just a very clean ramp spell in these colors and in this deck idea. It turns into a very powerful ramp / cantrip. If we get an Enchantress effect in play, this can turn into draw 3 cards, add a green. And Worship as another lock with our Argothian Enchantress. If we get a creature that can't be targeted by single target removal spells, and Worship says damage that would reduce your life total to less than 1, instead reduces it to 1 if you control a creature, it makes our opponent have to have a very specific set of answers for our creatures. Like if we're playing against a red deck that's trying to burn us out, I have a little bit of slant towards that already, but a lot of times Worship plus Enchantress is just GG. They have a hard time getting through that anyway. Land base is 9 basics, 14 basics, 9 forests, 5 plains. I am playing some non-basics. I know I'm going against the stream name. Take it out on me in the comments. I have 1 Core Haven, 1 Sarah Sanctum, and 2 fetches that are on color. And in the sideboard, I plan on turning into an Oath deck. I'm not playing Gaia's Blessing. I probably should. I couldn't find them before I had to register my list. So I would probably cut a focus and a warmth for 2 blessings if I was to do this again. Oath of Druids is our pivot. So during each player's upkeep, if that player controls fewer creatures than the opponent, that player may reveal cards from his or her library until he or she reveals a creature card. Player puts the creature card into play, all other revealed cards into the graveyard. Ancestor's Chosen is another creature to bring in. It's a 4/4 first strike. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life for each card in your graveyard. So this is routinely gain 15 to 25 life. The Nishobas are the other hits from Oath, and we're just planning on kind of turning into a enchantment control deck. You can leave the Argothians in, but a lot of times decks will bring in answers to the Argothians. Black decks will bring in Engineered Plague. Other decks, I've had people bring in Meddling Mages or have named Argothian with Meddling Mage in game 1 and 2, and then it's just completely blanked by pivoting. It's come up. It's not like clean. I don't know if it's correct, but I usually trim Argothians, maybe leave 1 in to hit because it's still a draw engine. It's not the best thing you can be doing with Oath. I will be the first to admit that. So I would probably bring in another monster from the board and add Gaia's Blessing. Ruination is probably too cute, but we'll get there in a second. Light of Day, 4-mana enchantment that says your black creatures can't attack or block. If your opponent is on mono black, they cannot beat this a lot of the time. They don't have a way through it that I'm aware of. I think there is answers in the format, but I can't remember the name of the card offhand. Oh man, that's gonna bother me. If I find the name of the card, I'll put it up on screen right now, but I'm gonna continue on. Ruination is a 1 red and 3 destroy all non-basics. We have a lot of basics. We're only playing 2 non-basics that stick around and play. And using Ruination against certain decks is just GG. If we play into a long game and get a Ruination that takes 5, 6, 7 lands out of play, it's good enough a lot of the time. They just can't play the game after that. Spiritual Focus is a way to fight the black discard decks, the bottomless pit rack decks. Like whenever a spell and ability an opponent controls causes you to discard a card, you gain 2 life and you may draw a card. So we get a benefit out of what they're trying to turn into a negative for us. Swords to Plowshares comes in to clean up any pesky creatures, keep us alive long enough to get our pieces in play. Combo creatures is something that I've been running into. I don't know if it's correct. A lot of the combo creature decks like Alluring can just go over the top of you with a single removal spell. So probably not the best case, but it's what I'm doing right now. It's what I'm doing with this iteration, and I've been liking it. I'm playing 2 Warmths. Whenever one of your opponents plays a red spell, you gain 2 life. Gives you a lot of time against Sly, gives you time to figure it out. It's a little bit of a bridge against Goblins. Goblins is pretty fast, and they play Tranquil Domain a lot of the time. So I don't know if this is the best, but would probably bring it in anyway. But overall, I've been really enjoying this deck. It's a lot of fun. It's a little bit spicy compared to traditional Enchantress, and I think that that's one of the coolest things about Premodern is you can play weird cards that you want. Like this looks bad on paper, but it comes up. Like these games go long enough where you turtle up and prison up and you get this weird one-of out of your deck because you can't be targeted. You're drawing 2 or 3 or 4 cards a turn. Your opponent can't damage you. And once you get to that point, how you win is kind of moot. Enchantress a lot of time plays Words of War to shock your opponent out, or there's a Mesa card, I'm forgetting the name of it right now, but it makes a bunch of Pegasi. Like there's all kinds of creative ways to win the game as Enchantress. I'm choosing to do it with Dragon's Roost and Sunglasses of Urza. I enjoy that about the format. It's one of the things I really enjoy about Magic in general is expressing yourself through deck creation. So if you enjoyed this deck tech, feel free to give a like and subscribe and let me know in the comments what you would build or change about the deck. Thank you. Have a good day.